Astrology, ancient mystical star science, or man-made mumbo-jumbo. Love it or loathe it, astrology has been around for thousands of years. Here's an Egyptian depiction of the night sky. The Egyptians believed that the constellations were the representation of their pantheistic gods and goddesses. Astrologers focus on the area of the night sky known as the ecliptic, as seen here. The ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun as seen from the earth. Divided into the 12 major constellations that make up the ecliptic, astrologers follow the celestial bodies as they travel through it. From the ecliptic is derived the zodiac that we know today. The Egyptians believed that the heavens were imbued with the magical and mystical properties of their gods and goddesses, and they believed that they could channel their energies by reflecting the constellations in their architecture on the ground below. An example is the layout of the pyramids at Giza, which the Egyptians built to reflect the celestial grouping known as Orion's belt. It's an ancient hermetic principle called as above, so below. Astrology today has been largely relegated to the ranks of superstition, with many people glancing at their horoscopes for fun. But tabloid astrology merely focuses on the position of the sun through the ecliptic. In-depth astrology considers the influence of all the solar system's celestial bodies, following the positions of the sun, Saturn, and even Pluto. As the celestial bodies travel through the ecliptic, the apparent path they trace as seen from the Earth, astrologers believe they form influential aspects to each other. This in-depth astrology is used in occult circles, such as secret societies, like the Order of the Golden Dawn, with its complex occult symbolism. The Freemasons, whose members have included America's first president, George Washington, use astrology in their symbolic art. Here we see a Freemasonic tracing board whose royal arch can be seen adorned with the signs of the zodiac. On the Freemasonic apron, the all-seeing eye of Horus, an Egyptian symbol. At the George Washington Masonic Monument, we see a giant compass and square depicted. The Freemasonic symbol of their great work is seen here, also adorned with another Egyptian all-seeing eye. But what of the compass and square and its Illuminati symbolism? What can it mean?
In the Divine Pymander is revealed the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as pictured by this tarot card of a magician with one hand up and the other hand down.
As above, so below. And what that means is that in esoteric thought, in everything that is above is reflected down below. And that everything that is down here has a supernal, macrocosmic, if you will, origin. And that's one of the essential concepts in the occult.
As above, so below is repeatedly symbolized in esoteric art and a variety of symbols, the most basic of which is a triangle pointing upward or above. This is accompanied by a second triangle pointing downward, below. When combined, they form a hexagram, commonly recognized as the Star of David, one of the most dominant symbols in the occult. Removing the base of the triangles, one can see the outline for the square and compass of Freemasonry. This next image shows what Manly Hall called the God of Reflections. He is called the Ancient One, perched over a pool of water that reflects his image. Notice also how the placement of his arms and the crown upon his head form two triangles like a Star of David, while on his chest is a Maltese cross, positioned upward and then reflected again down below. Esoterics believe this same principle of reflection can be found in nature, with bodies of water providing a mirror as a picture of the Hermetic maxim. With this in mind, consider the placement of the reflecting pools in our nation's capital. Before the Washington Monument, the U.S. Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Supreme Court.
From the symbolic compass and square, with its Egyptian all-seeing eye and as above, so below references, and the royal arch adorned with astrological symbolism, can we conclude that the Illuminati and their so-called great work is to mimic their ancient Egyptian masters?
As above, so below. All those individuals that were involved in any type of architecture to the ancients, that philosophy, that dictum, especially in Freemasonry, was as above, so below. What you have in the heavens should reflect, at a certain period of time, that which is on the earth.
Federal Triangle was basically reflected from the stars.
Washington, D.C. was built according to Hermetic principles, as above, so below.
It was laid out to reflect what was going on in the stars, where you had a right-angled triangle surrounding the constellation of Virgo.
The right-angled triangle surrounding Virgo is partly reflected in the layout of Federal Triangle. The White House, Washington Monument, and Capitol Building were designed in a right triangle, according to a star pattern above, where three stars surround the constellation Virgo, forming a stellar triangle.
With this in mind, consider the following. On September 11th, 2001, during the incident involving the Twin Towers, there was, above, an important astrological alignment between two of the most astrologically powerful celestial bodies, Saturn and Pluto. They formed an important aspect to each other, a highly destructive one, an opposition. Let us begin by looking at the planet Saturn. Saturn, and its astrological symbolism, is that of the planet of form and structure. It is also known as the planet of materialistic power. Saturn, on 9/11, was in the sign of Gemini, the twins. Gemini also represents multiplicity. Now let us consider Pluto. Pluto represents destruction and transformation. Pluto on 9/11 was in the sign of Sagittarius, the sign of religion, the sign of foreign cultures and long-distance travel. Is the planet of structure in the sign of the twins enough to give us an as above, so below reflection? Is Pluto in the sign of religion enough to give us the as above, so below reflection on 9/11? Are the Illuminati, with their worship of astrology, their obsession, their fixation with all things Egyptian, still performing occult ritualistic sacrifices of as above, so below connotations? Or do you believe in magic? In the previous video, we looked at astrology from its ancient origins, such as from within the Egyptian cultures. We looked at the architectural reflections of important constellations on the ground below, in the Hermetic principle known as above, so below. We then considered modern-day occult astrology, used in, as well as other fields, secret societies. As in the Freemasonic Royal Arch, adorned with the signs of the zodiac, as well as their use of Egyptian symbolism, such as the all-seeing eye, which is seen above the compass and square, a symbol of the architectural tools which are used by the Freemasons to build what they would call the Great Work, a reflection of that which is above, below, on the ground, mimicking the ancient Egyptian knowledge keepers. With this in mind, we considered the astrological or above configuration of 9/11, the 180-degree opposition between two key astrological planets, Saturn and Pluto. Saturn, the planet of structure and materialistic power, in the sign of the twins and multiplicity, gave us an interesting below reflection, the twinned world trade structural center of materialistic power, complete with multiple floors. Pluto, the planet of transformation through destruction, in the sign of Sagittarius, foreign cultures and religion, brought to our attention another key, interesting below reflection, the role played by the fundamentalist Islamic hijackers that allegedly destroyed the World Trade Center with fanatical religious fervor based on hatred for the West. With such an impressive sky-ground astrological correlation on 9/11, the like of which may never have been seen before with such precision, we asked the question, was there something more to 9/11 than we have been led to believe, or was it all merely astrological synchronicity? A closer look at the sign which Saturn occupied on 9/11 reveals that Gemini, ruled by Mercury, the winged messenger, is the sign of communication. Saturn, whose astrological symbolism also includes restriction, whilst in Gemini, can be said to be astrologically the restriction of communication. And that is certainly something that the official explanation expects us to believe, with both NORAD and the FAA suffering serious setbacks in communication by failing to dispatch interceptive aircraft. More impressive as above so below correlations can be seen when we consider that the topping out or final structural work was completed on the World Trade Center as Saturn entered Gemini years previously in 1971. But it wasn't until some 2 years later that the World Trade Center opening ceremony was held, when Saturn occupied the exact same area of Gemini as it did on 9/11, giving us another remarkable as above so below correlation of Saturn being in the exact same place when the Twin Towers were publicly opened in 1973 and so publicly closed on 9/11/2001. Indeed, there are some striking resemblances between Saturn above and the World Trade Center below. According to the NASA website, Saturn's rings are made up of 7 parts, and remarkably, the World Trade Center has 7 buildings. The occult symbol for Saturn, seen here from the Freemasonic Scottish Rite depiction, is the Seal of Solomon, and the 7th building of the World Trade Center was the Solomon Building. Minoru Yamasaki designed the World Trade Center complex to aesthetically mirror the Islamic temple at Mecca where the black stone of the Kaaba is placed. Many historians believe that the Kaaba itself is a pagan representation of the planet Saturn. Did the Illuminati design and build the World Trade Center complex to hermetically mirror the symbolism of Saturn in some way? Are these 5 direct links between the two entities coincidence, astrological synchronicity, or something else entirely? In occult lore, Saturn is known as the gateway to the gods and the dweller on the threshold, giving us the idea of Saturn symbolizing an entrance to somewhere or something. But where? Here is a Freemasonic ritual of someone at the entrance to somewhere, with 2 pillars either side and the seal of Solomon above. Does the entrance lead to a symbolic Temple of Solomon, with the 2 pillars of Boaz and Jachin being ritualistically embodied as the Twin Towers? This will be touched on in a later presentation. But in the meantime, I'd like to draw your attention to a bit of synchromysticism that my partner and I experienced shortly after I uploaded the first video entitled "Do You Believe in Magick?" After making sure the film had uploaded, my partner and I decided to watch a film on a well-known film link site. As we scrolled through the vast list of uploaded films, my partner was drawn to a particular title, The 10th Kingdom. I clicked on the title and was taken immediately to this poster designed for the film, released in the year 2000. The words "Do you believe in magic?" at the top would have been enough to make me chuckle synchronistically, but to see an as above so below depiction so similar to the one I'd used in the first video had me synchronistically saucer-eyed. And as if that wasn't enough, the trailer showed us that a time door, or Saturn Solomon Gate, opened up in New York with the Twin Towers as a point of destination. Buildings are destroyed, and as a giant strides across a bridge, the Twin Towers can be seen collapsing in the background. We watched, and what followed is certainly illuminating, and will be touched upon in another episode. Thank you. The astrological configuration on 9/11, with Saturn, planet of structure and materialistic power, in the sign of Gemini, the twins, gives us a direct as above so below reflection, as does Pluto, planet of transformation through destruction, in the sign of Sagittarius, religion, foreign cultures and long distance travel, symbolic of the alleged hijackers and their religiously inspired plot to destroy the structural center of materialistic power in New York, thereby transforming the country of America and the world in one fell swoop. With such an impressive as above so below correlation on that day, we ask the question, do you believe in magic? Are these 5 direct correlations between Saturn and the World Trade Center complex coincidence, astrological synchronicity, or are they the result of a little influence by a hidden helping hand? So what of Pluto and its role in the astrological configuration on 9/11? Well, Pluto, astrologically, and its planetary influences are said to govern deep transformation. Pluto also brings past tensions back to the surface, and Pluto also rules all things secretive. astrological Pluto gives us direct as above so below correlations with deep transformations occurring on all levels at the World Trade Center, New York, America, and indeed the world. The long-standing Muslim-Christian tensions were brought back to the surface on a massive scale, and the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda and its alleged secret plot was laid open for all to see. And Pluto in Sagittarius, the sign of religion, ties all these aspects together with remarkable accuracy. Can events of a celestial nature really so closely mirror those on the ground below? Or is some other force secretly at work? Given that Pluto postdates the origins of ancient astrology and the earlier practices of occult magic, and in the interest of impartial, factual truth-seeking, I find it necessary at this point to explore the history of the recently discovered and recently demoted celestial body, Pluto. The story begins at Lowell Observatory in the USA, where Percival Lowell began searching for his Planet X in 1906. After his death in 1916, his work was continued by Clyde Tombaugh, who, after studying photographic plates of space, discovered the elusive ninth planet, and on March 13, 1930, he announced his discovery in a telegram to Harvard Observatory. The story regarding the eventual naming of the planet begins the very next day in Oxford, England, where a certain Falconer Madden sits for breakfast with his granddaughter, reading about the as yet unnamed discovery in the Sunday Times. Madden asks his granddaughter for a suitable name, and Venetia, who just happens to have read a book about mythological gods, suggests the name Pluto. Madden, so enthralled by the suggestion, runs off to tell his friend Herbert Hall Turner, who just happens to be an astronomer royal. He then telegrams Lowell Observatory, who unanimously decide to accept the suggested name in May 1930. This seemingly non-occultic story takes a bizarre turn when we discover that there was another Saturn-Pluto opposition in 1930, the very essence of this series. Just as surprising is the curious coincidence that Falconer Madden's brother, Henry Madden, is also responsible for naming celestial bodies Mars's moons. And according to Venetia herself, she played no other role in the story than merely saying at some point the word Pluto. In her own words, she admits she remembers very little about the conversation, and that the actual naming of Pluto was entirely Madden's work. And strangely, like the Madden brothers, Pluto and Mars are astrologically linked. Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. Staggering then to find them both linked to two brothers who played key roles in the naming of two astrologically linked celestial bodies. Is this merely coincidental history? More as above so below wonderment? Or is there something else at work behind the scenes? Madden was head of the Bodleian Library in Oxford. The Bodleian Library is named after its founder, Sir Thomas Bodley, Freemasonic member of the Brotherhood Fratelli Obscuri and cousin of Sir Francis Bacon, the grandfather of modern Freemasonry. Bodleian Library also includes Rhodes House, named in honour of gold and diamond magnate and Master Mason Cecil Rhodes, who conspiratorially initiated the Round Table Group at Oxford, hub of many still largely secret organisations, which include the Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group, and the Council of Foreign Relations, headed by a certain David Rockefeller. This brings us right back full circle to 9/11 and Dick Cheney, Vice President of America, on that fateful day.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Is the story of the naming of Pluto by a little girl and her grandfather, who just happened to be best friends with an astronomer royal and whose brother just so happened to name the moons of Mars, as believable as it may or may not seem? Does the story City of Origin, with its long tradition of master masons and secret organizations, give us justifiable cause to re-evaluate the story's credibility? Why decide on the name Pluto and not one of the many other suggestions, one of which came from the astronomer's own widow? Does the answer lie in mythology? The mythological god Pluto is a direct Roman replica of the Greek god Hades, god of the underworld. Hades is Greek for unseen, and Pluto comes from Pluton, a Greek word which relates to the word wealth. Hades and Pluto are mythologically the same unseen god of wealth, a status not dissimilar to a secret society. Pluto remains unseen because of his mythical cap of invisibility, and Grand Master Mason Sir Francis Bacon wrote in his collected essays, "For the helmet of Pluto which maketh the politic man go invisible is secrecy in the council." To the Greeks, Hades thrived on the misery of mankind, and as Sophocles wrote of Hades, he is enriched by our sighs and tears. With this in mind, consider Bush's key 9/11 speech about the alleged hijackers.
Behind them is a cult of evil, which seeks to harm the innocent and thrives on human suffering. Theirs is the worst kind of cruelty. The cruelty that is fed, not weakened, by tears.
Perhaps Bush's speechwriters are simply adept astrologers. Or was it an unconscious mythological reference to Al-Qaeda? Or is Bush referring to something far more sinister indeed? Was the planet Pluto named after the unseen god of wealth who is enriched by human pain and whose cap makes the man of politics invisible, to act as a reference for something still largely unseen? Is it merely coincidence that these two entities should be established on the same day of the year? Is it coincidence that the planet and the god will be forever linked with images of virginity? And was the cap of invisibility once again placed upon Pluto in 2006 to prevent the would-be seeker from believing in magic at all? Do you believe in magic? We have previously noted the many striking correlations between the astrological planet Saturn and the World Trade Center complex in New York. Correlations of a structural, symbolic, and esoteric nature, both before and after the tragic events of September the 11th, 2001. Correlations which seem more than just mere mundane chance. Ancient history is replete with symbolic, freestanding twin structures which often depict a deity at their center, or that simply stand as mysterious markers, like a gateway to some other unknown world beyond. In the book The Golden Dawn, which claims to hold the entire magical teachings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, whose members included self-proclaimed beast Aleister Crowley, it is claimed that therein lies an explanation of the symbols of the grade of the neophyte, which clarifies the mystical meaning of the two pillars. As the book continues, a magical ritual of the two pillars is outlined, and it is explained to the beginner that the mysterious and magical motif of the two pillars have many names and many historical origins. One of which, we are told, is from the Egyptian north and south columns of the gate of the Egyptian Hall of Truth, reminding us instantly of the north and south twin structures of the World Trade Center complex. Furthermore, in 33 Degree Mason Manly P. Hall's writings, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, more mention is made of the twin Egyptian obelisks, which are interchangeable with all the other twin structures throughout history. Hall asserts that the obelisks before the sanctuaries of Egypt have the same symbolic import as the biblical twin pillars of Boaz and Jachin of Solomon's Temple, monuments to which can be seen depicted with the as above, so below compass and square motif, symbolic of the seal of Solomon, the magical representation of the planet Saturn, which was in Gemini, astrological sign of the twins, on 9/11/2001. In the King James Bible, Boaz and Jachin are described as each being decorated with checker work, and the very same detail is seen surrounding the symbolic pillars in every Freemasonic hall. In the same biblical chapter, Boaz and Jachin are described as being decorated with pomegranates, a feature prominently seen surrounding the Tarot Pack's High Priestess, who sits between the very same pillars. The card can also be seen with the familiar twin numeral or Gemini symbol at its top. Boaz and Jachin magically represent polarity, polarities of dark and light, female, male, birth and death, and the interchangeable north and south, again reminding us instantly of 9/11's twinned structural centerpiece. In The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Hall states that in the mysterious Sephirothic Tree of Life, these two pillars symbolize severity and mercy. The Tree of Life is, of course, the Kabbalah, a multi-symbolic magical map of consciousness, whose sephira or spheres incorporate the planets of astrology, which are linked by magical paths, each ruled by one of the Tarot Pack's 22 major Arcana cards. The two Masonic pillars Boaz and Jachin are interchangeable with the two outer columns on the Tree of Life, as highlighted here. As Hall stated, they are known as severity and mercy, more examples of their polarity, as noted earlier. The complete Tree of Life is interchangeable with another Freemasonic tracing board as seen here, which is orientated by the letters E for East and W for West at the top and bottom, which consequently orientates the two outer columns of Boaz and Jachin with North and South, giving us another direct hit with the North and South twin towers of 9/11's World Trade Center. Were these twin towers really built to reflect the magical motif of the ancient pillars Boaz and Jachin? Were they built to magically represent the knowledge encoded in the Kabbalah? If so, then where is the middle pillar? At the base of World Trade Center 1 and 2, as well as this strangely Egyptian-looking pyramidal structure, was this, a fountain feature, known locally to lunching New Yorkers as the Sphere. Standing between the two twin towers, the Sphere was commissioned simultaneously as work began at the World Trade Center site in the 1960s, seemingly integral to the complex's original design. The Sphere's actual artistic title is the Great Spherical Caryatid, named by its designer Fritz Koenig. A caryatid architecturally is a replacement pillar or column, and as the caryatid stood between the two towers, our replacement column would first translate to this, then to this, and eventually to this, giving us our missing mystical column. Is all this just mere chance, synchronicity, or the result of more than just a little help from a hidden helping hand? When Nelson Rockefeller opened the Twin Towers in 1973, he stated that the Twin Towers were a great marriage of utility and beauty. A definition of utility is designed for strength. Was this Rockefeller quote code for the two Freemasonic pillars, also known as strength and beauty? The great spherical caryatid, or symbolic middle pillar, was set to rotate once every 24 hours, the length of an Earth day. It was also made of 52 pieces of bronze, the alloy used to forge the original twin pillars Boaz and Jachin. There are 52 weeks in an Earth year. This gives the caryatid, or middle pillar, a strong resonance with the planet Earth, and on the Tree of Life, the Earth rules the 10th Sephirah, situated at the bottom of the middle pillar. This 10th Sephirah is known as Malkuth, and is said to resonate strongly with the first Sephirah at its opposite extreme, known as Kether. In fact, it is said Kabbalistically of these two spheres that Malkuth is in Kether and Kether is in Malkuth, or, put more simply, as above, so below. They are interchangeable. This leaves us with little doubt that the spherical, symbolic caryatid is the third pillar at the World Trade Center monument to Magick. On the Tree of Life, Malkuth, the Earth Sephirah, is the 10th Sephirah. Malkuth means kingdom, and within Malkuth lies the gate which leads to the other 9 spheres upon the tree. This gate leads to the pathway which is ruled by the World Tarot card, which relates to the planet Saturn. The symbol for Saturn, the cross, is called the Tau, which is represented Kabbalistically by the letters TH, reminding us instantly of the poster for the 10th Kingdom with the same motif, in which a magical gate opens between the 10th Kingdom, New York Earth, and the other 9 kingdoms, magically informing us that even if you may not, some do believe in magic. On 9/11, Saturn and Pluto were not alone in their powerful astrological configuration. The Sun also played its magical part in the skies above the tragic scene below. Saturn and Pluto, opposed in the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, were joined by the Sun in the sign of Virgo, at 90 degrees, forming an aspect known as a grand T-square. The Sun, astrologically, is said to intensify the existing aspect that it becomes part of, namely the 180-degree opposition between Saturn and Pluto, and seemingly, magically, the Sun's astrological energy intensified this already powerful aspect, creating the total destruction of the massively towering twin structures on an unprecedented scale. The astrological Sun also governs the aspect of the individual, an individual's personal power, the individual's sense of purpose, and the individual's expression of will. And as the Sun was in the sign of Virgo on 9/11, which is said to rule service to others, the individual's personal power became one of unification. The sense of purpose was to save others' lives, and the expression of will was one of self-sacrifice, with record numbers of the police, ambulance and fire services out in full force, risking life and limb, as well as general members of the public going to great lengths to save the lives of others whilst risking their own. Is this yet another example of as above so below energy playing itself out upon the world stage? Is there something else about these three planets that would suggest to us that some other force had its part to play that day? "33-degree Mason Albert Pike, the only military man in history to have a dedicated statue in Washington, D.C., is renowned for his Freemasonic epic Morals and Dogma, which has 32 chapters, the last of which is mysteriously entitled Sublime Prince of the Royal Secret. In Morals and Dogma, Pike informs the reader that the two solstices, Cancer and Capricorn, the two gates of heaven, are the two pillars. They still appear in our lodges as the two great pillars, Jachin and Boaz. The solstices are of course the extreme outer stations of the sun when viewing the horizon over the course of the solar year. These two stations of the sun form the northern solstice in Cancer and the southern solstice in Capricorn, and as Pike himself stated, they are represented as the two mysterious Freemasonic pillars, Boaz and Jachin. And as we have seen in previous episodes, these pillars may have been magically represented by the twin towers of 9/11. On the surface, Pike's quote presents us with a setback. The two solstices, and therefore the two pillars, are housed within, according to Pike, the two astrological signs Cancer and Capricorn, and not Gemini and Sagittarius, the signs which so accurately symbolize the qualities of 9/11. However, further on in Morals and Dogma, which coincidentally was republished in 1966, the same year that groundbreaking work began at the World Trade Center site, Pike refers to the Roman scholar Macrobius, renowned for his work entitled Saturnalia. Pike tells us that the galaxy, according to Macrobius, crosses the two opposite points Cancer and Capricorn. The two tropics before his time corresponded with those two constellations, but in his time with Gemini and Sagittarius, placing us right back in 9/11. This is because, as Pike informs us of the precession of the equinoxes, a celestial phenomenon which means that because of the Earth's axial wobble, the constellation seen rising in the east during the spring equinox, or the point between the solstices, as seen here, moves backwards through the zodiac, so the solstice within Cancer, the northern solstice, would eventually take place with Gemini as its backdrop. Furthermore, in Morals and Dogma, Pike gives us more Freemasonic symbolism that represents the solstices, also known as Boaz and Jachin. He tells the reader that they are also known as two parallel lines which bound the circle with a point in the center, which is an emblem of the sun. The sun, we are told, is also known within Freemasonic circles as the blazing star. The blazing star, Pike continues, or the glory in the center, is an emblem of prudence, an emblem of omniscience, the all-seeing eye, all of which are references to the sun. The blazing star, or sun, is seen here between the two solstices, or Boaz and Jachin, on this Freemasonic tracing board. The blazing star, or glory in the center of Boaz and Jachin, is emblematic of the sun and the solstices. The blazing star, according to Pike, is an emblem of prudence, which astrologically is a quality of Virgo, and the sun was in the very same sign, Virgo, directly within the center of Pike's reconsidered solstices, Gemini and Sagittarius, on 9/11/2001. Is all this just coincidence, synchronicity, magical synergy, or the evidence of some secret symbolic ritualization of the skies on 9/11? A further look at our three celestial wonders reveals more magical correlations, this time with our multi-symbolic magical map of consciousness, the Kabbalah. As we have previously noted, the spheres, or Sephira, are each ruled by a planet, and the Sun, Saturn, and Pluto are once again mysteriously directly connected upon the Tree of Life, as seen here, with all three planets being directly linked by the magical pathways that connect the spheres. These pathways are each ruled by a tarot card, and the plot definitely thickens when we discover that the path that links Saturn and Pluto is the Magician, our old friend from episode 1, with his by now very familiar as above so below arm positioning. The path linking Saturn and the Sun is the Lover's card, or the Tarot's representation of Gemini, the twins, the sign in which our planet of structure was placed, and the path linking the Sun with Pluto is none other than the High Priestess, guardian of the mysteries, who also sits between our old friends Boaz and Jackin. Can such direct correlations between a global catastrophic event and the world of the occult really be nothing more than mere proof of the accuracy of its teachings? Should we all believe in magic? The astrological placings of Pluto and Saturn, their 2001 oppositional alignment, give us an astoundingly accurate above configuration to the events of 9/11 below. The astrological signs which housed the oppositional alignment, Sagittarius and Gemini, give us an astrological axis of polarity which not only played a significant role in the events of September the 11th, 2001, but also in the history of the USA itself. An individual's astrological birth chart is made up of a number of fundamental elements, the basics of which are the zodiac's 12 signs from Aries to Pisces, which are also known as the houses. The first house, traditionally ruled by Aries, when applied to an individual's birth chart, gives the astrologer the point within the chart known as the ascendant. The ascendant, also known as the rising sign, is indeed the sign seen rising above the eastern horizon at the moment of the individual's birth. When the time, date and location of the individual is ascertained, the rising sign or ascendant can be concluded, and depending on the time, date and locational information, the ascendant can be any one of the 12 signs. Once the ascendant of the individual is determined, the planets can be given their correct house placings and the basic elements of the birth chart are completed. The point opposite the ascendant is known as the descendant, and these two opposite extremes of the birth chart give us another astrological axis of polarity. It is this axis of polarity which has been the focus of intense debate within the US astrological community for some 150 years. As well as casting charts for individuals, astrologers also cast charts for events such as 9/11 and charts for countries of the world, and in US astrological circles The central subject of astrological debate is over the US chart's ascendant and descendant axis of polarity. The majority of the US astrological community believe that this ascendant-descendant axis of polarity is either Sagittarius rising Gemini descendant or Gemini rising Sagittarius descendant, the very same axis of polarity that Saturn and Pluto occupied on 9/11/2001. The US astrological community has debated the ascendant-descendant axis of polarity for some 150 years, and is, figuratively speaking, split down the middle, with one half believing the country of the US has Sagittarius rising, and the other half believing the US ascendant sign is Gemini. The debate is centered upon the two most notable US birth charts, one cast by 18th century occultist Ebenezer Sibley, and the other by Luke Broughton, the 19th century prominent astrologer. Ebenezer Sibley, who cast the Sagittarius rising chart, which was published sometime around 1784, was born in England. Ebenezer Sibley was also a high-ranking Freemason. Luke Broughton, responsible for the Gemini rising chart, published in 1861, was also born in England, and as well as being America's most prominent astrologer of his day, he was also a doctor. Broughton's Gemini rising chart is based on the discovery of the planet Uranus, the astrological planet of revolution. Sibley believed that Uranus should be placed on the USA's ascendant line because it symbolized the USA's historical revolutionary spirit. The chart is cast for July 4th, 1776, the signing of America's Declaration of Independence at 2:17 a.m. Broughton believed this to be the time at which the Declaration of Independence was signed. However, there is no evidence for this historically. Broughton's chart seems based on his astrological preference of the revolutionary planet Uranus being discovered at around the same time as America's Revolutionary War of Independence. Ebenezer Sibley, our high-ranking Freemason, also based his chart on the signing of the Declaration of Independence date July 4th, 1776, many of the signatories of which were also Freemasons. Sibley was notoriously featured in the UK's Gloucester Journal in an article dated July 4th, 1791, the same day and month date upon which his USA chart is based. According to the article, Sibley's occultist work was suppressed by the government of the day, under the idea that his work revealed secrets dangerous to be known. Sibley's chart seems to be based on specific inside information of the actual declaration signing time of 5:10 p.m. and does seem to be backed up by historical evidence. This places the USA's ascendant at 12 degrees of Sagittarius, and Pluto, our planet of transformation through destruction, was at the exact same 12-degree point of Sagittarius opposing Saturn on 9/11/2001. The ascendant is the birth line or starting point of the birth chart and its subject. It is the beginning of the birth chart, the birth chart's foundation, and some have compared it to the dawn of the life of the subject in question. The USA's birth date of July 4th, 1776 does of course represent the birth of the country's independence, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and, like the ascendant itself, it is the country's starting point, its beginning, its foundation, and its dawn. The rising sign itself shares remarkable correlative qualities with the birth of the USA. A Sagittarian quality is one of freedom, something that the founding fathers had foremost in their minds at the Declaration signing, the Declaration being commonly known as the first of America's freedom documents. This leads us to more Sagittarian qualities of politics and law. The Declaration was of course a political document, the foundation for the other freedom documents of political law, the US Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The 1776 ascendant line of the USA was at 12 degrees Sagittarius, and Pluto, our planet of transformation, was at the exact same degree on 9/11/2001, thus transforming the foundation of the country, which led to the signing of the Patriot Acts, which many have claimed have destroyed the foundation of political and lawful freedom upon which the USA is built. Is all this just coincidence? Synchronicity? As above, so below magical synergy? Could alleged 9/11 perpetrator Osama bin Laden have unknowingly timed his attack with such serendipitous precision, executing his transformative blow precisely when Pluto, planet of transformation, sat exactly upon the foundation point of the USA, freedom capital of the Western world? Perhaps bin Laden purposefully used the as above so below energy of the day because he knew that once the US had realized that
Our very freedom came under attack.
And they had responded to the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda by saying,
They cannot touch the foundation of America.
the astrological energy of the day and its reverberations would be just too strong, and eventually Bush would be cosmically forced to transform and destroy the foundation of America himself. Perhaps it was one in the all-seeing eye of the great Satan's many occultist secret societies. Or was it the secret societies themselves, because they believe in magic?